In 1971, somewhere in the middle of one of the largest deserts in Asia, a team of Soviet engineers made a mistake. They were drilling for oil in the Karakum Desert of what was then the Turkmen Soviet Socialist Republic, a vast, flat, featureless expanse of sand and scrub that covers roughly 80% of modern Turkmenistan. The Karakum is not a dramatic desert. It does not have the towering dunes of the Sahara or the alien rock formations of the Lut. It is simply enormous, hot, and empty. 350,000 square kilometers of nothing stretching in every direction under a sky so wide it feels like pressure. The engineers were prospecting for natural gas. Turkmenistan sits on the 6th largest natural gas reserves in the world, an underground ocean of methane and hydrocarbons trapped beneath the desert floor. The Soviets wanted it. They drove their drilling rig into the sand, punched a borehole into the earth, and hit something they did not expect. Instead of a stable gas deposit, they punctured the roof of a massive underground cavern filled with natural gas. The ground beneath the rig gave way. The cavern collapsed. The drilling rig, the camp, and all the equipment vanished into a hole that opened in the desert floor like a mouth. What remained was a crater, roughly 70 meters across, about 30 meters deep. And from every crack and fissure in its floor, natural gas hissed upward into the open air. Methane, a gas that is colorless, odorless in its pure form, and extraordinarily dangerous in concentrated volumes. The engineers faced a decision: leave the crater venting raw methane into the atmosphere, where it could poison anyone or anything downwind, or set it on fire, burn off the gas in a controlled ignition, and wait for the pocket to exhaust itself. They estimated it would burn for a few weeks, maybe a month. They lit it. That was 54 years ago. The crater is still burning, and nobody, not the Soviet Union, not independent Turkmenistan, not the state gas company, not any international engineering team, has been able to put it out. Here is the part that makes the story even stranger. There are no official Soviet records of the incident, no drilling logs, no accident reports, no documentation of who made the decision to ignite the gas or when exactly it happened. The 1971 date and the drilling accident narrative have been repeated so many times that they have hardened into fact, but they may not be entirely accurate. Local Turkmen geologists who have studied the site for decades believe the ground collapse may have actually occurred in the 1960s, and that the fire was not set until as late as the 1980s. George Kourounis, the explorer who descended into the crater in 2013, noted that his investigation cast doubt on the standard origin story. The truth is that nobody knows exactly when the crater formed, when it was set alight, or who gave the order. The Soviet Union did not keep records of its mistakes in remote Central Asian deserts, or if it did, those records disappeared with the state that created them. What is not disputed is that the crater has been burning continuously for decades, that it shows no sign of running out of fuel on its own, and that it sits in the middle of one of the most geologically gas-rich regions on Earth. If this is the kind of geographic story you came to YouTube for, subscribe to Uncharted Geography right now. We cover the most extreme places on the planet, and this one might be the most absurd. The Darvaza gas crater, known internationally as the Door to Hell and officially within Turkmenistan as the Shining of Karakum, sits approximately 260 kilometers north of Ashgabat, the Turkmen capital. There is nothing around it. The nearest village, also called Darvaza, was relocated by the government in 2004, moved away from the crater and the gas field it sits on. The drive from Ashgabat takes roughly 3 to 4 hours across flat desert on roads that deteriorate into sand tracks in the final stretch. There are no signs, no facilities, no gift shops, no fences, no entrance fees. You simply drive across the desert until you see a glow on the horizon, and then you arrive at the edge of a hole in the ground that has been on fire since before most of the people reading this were born. The visual experience of standing at the rim is, by every account, overwhelming. During the day, the crater looks like a collapsed amphitheater. A bowl of crumbling sandstone and hardened mud, its walls streaked with dark scorch marks, its floor pocked with hundreds of individual flames burning at different intensities. Some are small, flickering tongues of blue and orange barely visible in the daylight. Others erupt in jets that reach 10 to 15 meters, roaring with a sound visitors describe as somewhere between a gas stove turned to maximum and a distant jet engine. At night, the crater transforms into something that justifies every dramatic name it has been given. The flames illuminate the bowl from below, casting shifting orange light across the rim and throwing shadows that dance across the surrounding desert. The glow is visible for kilometers. In the absolute darkness of the Karakum, now one of the least light-polluted landscapes on Earth, the crater becomes a single point of fire in a void of sand and stars. The heat distortion warps the air above it into shimmering waves. Stand downwind, and the temperature blast will force you to shield your face and turn away. The crater does not care that you came to see it. It is indifferent to visitors in a way that makes the experience feel less like tourism and more like witnessing something that was never meant to be witnessed at all. Approximately 10,000 people visit the Darvaza crater each year, a modest number by global tourism standards, but remarkable given that reaching it requires a visa to one of the most closed and authoritarian countries on Earth, a multi-hour desert drive, and a willingness to camp in a landscape with no infrastructure whatsoever. Those who make the trip typically spend a night at a small yurt camp near the rim, watching the crater burn against the night sky until they fall asleep, or the wind shifts and drives them into their tents. In November 2013, Canadian explorer George Kourounis became the first human being to descend into the crater. Wearing a heat-resistant suit and a self-contained breathing apparatus, he was lowered by rope to the floor of the burning bowl in an expedition partially funded by National Geographic. He spent 17 minutes inside, long enough to collect soil samples from areas between the active flames. What the laboratory analysis revealed was unexpected. The soil samples contained bacteria, heat-resistant microorganisms living in the extreme conditions at the bottom of the crater. These bacteria were not found on the surface anywhere in the surrounding desert. The crater, despite being an active inferno, had created its own unique microenvironment, an ecosystem of extremophile organisms that had adapted to conditions that should preclude life entirely. Kourounis described the experience as science fiction made real, standing on the floor of a burning crater in the middle of a desert, surrounded by jets of fire, knowing that the ground beneath his feet was an active gas vent. He looked up and saw the circle of night sky above him and realized he was inside the Earth in a way that almost no human had ever been. If you are finding this fascinating, hit that like button for Uncharted Geography. It tells the algorithm to push this to more people who want to see the places the rest of the internet only scratches the surface of. The crater is also, in a quieter and more unsettling way, an ecological phenomenon. At night, insects from across the surrounding desert are drawn to the crater's light, the only artificial light source for dozens of kilometers in any direction. Moths, beetles, and other nocturnal insects fly toward the glow in a phototactic response, the same instinct that draws them to porch lights and street lamps. But there is no glass here, no barrier between the insect and the heat. They fly directly into the crater and are incinerated. Travel accounts describe watching streams of insects pouring over the rim toward the flames in what looks like a deliberate march into oblivion. And following the insects come the spiders. Camel spiders, large, fast-moving arachnids native to the Karakum, have been observed gathering at the crater's edge, drawn either by the insects or by the heat or by the light itself. Some accounts describe them falling or jumping into the flames. Whether this is deliberate behavior, predatory miscalculation, or simple disorientation is not scientifically established, but the image, spiders marching toward a burning hole in the ground, has become one of the most viscerally memorable details associated with the site. The political dimension of the crater is as strange as the crater itself. Turkmenistan is one of the most isolated and authoritarian countries in the world, a Central Asian state that the international community pays almost no attention to. The country has the sixth largest proven natural gas reserves on the planet, yet its population of roughly 6 million lives under a government that exercises near total control over media, movement, and public expression. Foreign journalists are rarely granted visas. Internet access is heavily restricted and monitored. Independent media does not exist in any meaningful sense. The country ranks near the bottom of every global press freedom and civil liberties index. Ashgabat, the capital, is one of the most surreal cities on earth, a marble-clad showcase of white buildings, golden statues, and empty boulevards built with gas revenue to project an image of modernity and prosperity that bears little resemblance to life outside the capital. The city holds a Guinness World Record for the highest density of white marble-clad buildings. It has an indoor Ferris wheel, a massive wedding palace shaped like an 8-pointed star, and monuments to subjects ranging from the Turkmen national carpet to the national breed of horse. The streets are wide, spotless, and largely empty. The architecture is grandiose and deliberately intimidating. It is a city designed not to be lived in, but to be looked at, a stage set in white marble for a government that treats its capital as a performance of national pride. The Darvaza crater exists in the gap between that image and reality. It is simultaneously Turkmenistan's most famous landmark and a source of official embarrassment, a permanent, visible reminder of Soviet-era industrial recklessness that burns through natural gas the government would prefer to sell. In January 2022, President Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov formally ordered scientists and engineers to find a way to extinguish the crater, citing environmental damage and the waste of a valuable natural resource. Several wells have since been drilled around the crater's perimeter to siphon off gas pressure and reduce the flow of methane feeding the flames. By mid-2025, the effort appeared to be showing results. At an international conference in Ashgabat, scientists from Turkmengaz, the state energy company, reported that the crater's flames had reduced to roughly 1/3 of their original intensity. Fires that were once visible from kilometers away are now only apparent up close. The crater, they suggested, may finally be dying. But the science tells a more complicated story. Data from Carbon Mapper, a California-based nonprofit that monitors methane emissions from space, shows that the crater emitted an average of approximately 1,300 kilograms of methane per hour between 2022 and 2025. In October 2025, that figure spiked to 1,960 kilograms per hour. The flames may be smaller, but the gas is still flowing. Turkmenistan already has one of the highest rates of methane emissions of any country on Earth, according to the International Energy Agency. And the Darvaza crater, while dramatic, is only one point source in a country riddled with leaking gas infrastructure. The environmental arithmetic is stark. Methane is roughly 80 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide over a 20-year period. A crater emitting 1,300 kilograms of methane per hour every hour for 54 years represents a continuous contribution to atmospheric warming that is difficult to calculate precisely but impossible to dismiss. The fire itself converts some of that methane to carbon dioxide through combustion, which is less potent but still a greenhouse gas. Extinguishing the fire without capping the gas source would actually make the environmental impact worse, not better, because unburned methane is far more damaging to the atmosphere than the carbon dioxide produced by burning it. This creates a paradox that no government statement has resolved. If you extinguish the fire but cannot seal the gas source, you trade a visible flame for an invisible but more dangerous emission. If you leave it burning, you waste a resource and contribute to climate change. If you cap the source, drill enough wells to depressurize the cavern, and seal the crater. You undertake a multi-million-dollar engineering project in the middle of a desert in one of the world's most opaque and difficult operating environments, with no guarantee of success. The crater does not care about any of this. It burns because there is gas beneath it and a hole above it. It has outlasted the Soviet Union that accidentally created it. It has outlasted 2 Turkmen presidents. it has outlasted every engineering estimate about when it would die. And while the flames may be shrinking, while the fire may finally, after more than half a century, be losing its battle with geology, nobody who has studied the Darvaza crater is willing to predict when it will actually go out. What makes the door to hell compelling is not that it is dangerous or beautiful, though it is both. It is that it is absurd. A hole in the ground that was supposed to burn for a few weeks and has been burning for 54 years. An engineering miscalculation that created a tourist attraction. A fire that nobody can decide whether to celebrate or extinguish. An ecological trap that draws insects and spiders to their deaths every night. A methane source that a satellite in California tracks from space. And at the center of it all, a country that most people cannot find on a map, sitting on one of the largest gas reserves in the world, watching its most famous landmark slowly, maybe, finally, burn itself out. The Karakum Desert does not negotiate with human plans. The gas beneath it does not follow engineering timelines. And the crater at Darvaza, the shining of Karakum, the door to hell, whatever you choose to call it, is the most visible proof on Earth that when humans punch a hole in the planet decides how long it stays open. 54 years and counting. Though maybe this time not for much longer. If this video changed how you see Turkmenistan and the strangest places on Earth, make sure you are subscribed to Uncharted Geography. We cover the craters, the islands, the deserts, and the geographic anomalies nobody else is telling you about. Hit subscribe, drop a comment telling me what bizarre place you want us to cover next, and I will see you in the next one.